And I also heard someone say, oh, I treat everybody the same. It doesn't matter to me who you are. And I'm like, you see, that's a statement that's made out of, it just tells, when you make that statement, it tells me that you haven't done a lot of introspection. Welcome to the No Common Measure podcast, where we tell stories that will guide and inspire you to look at your life experiences differently. So let's go to the statement that started this, that triggered this. So the statement, I am who I am. I've heard people say this so many times, and I'm like, sometimes it makes sense when they're saying it to motivate you to, achieve a goal, like, or if you're chasing something. But if you are causing harm to people, you saying I am who I am, or I am what I am, just doesn't apply, because now you're causing pain to other people, and it means that there's pain inside of you that you're trying to hide, which is something that you mentioned in your statement. So can you explain your statement to us, what the reply that you made to that statement?
Yeah, a lot of the time people have that response because they are, like you said, unable to empathize with others, right? Even unable to see other people's perspectives and needs, and but also because they are that they have a lot of difficulty looking inwards, looking at their flaws, looking at their mistakes, taking responsibility. And they don't know, they would be overwhelmed if they had to do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the response where they, shut down and they go, I am who I am, and there's nothing I can do. I like who I am. Some will even say, I like who I am.
Yeah.
So that's a problem, because they're not willing to engage in conscious relating, in taking responsibility for their actions and understanding their blind spots and how they might be creating pain to other people. And that's traumatizing sometimes.
Yes.
And it can be in the workplace that can happen, where people just feel like they're entitled to do whatever they want. And and so there's a lot of self-awareness there, and that is kind of like the shield, if you want. This is my shield. I am what I am who I am, and I like who I am. And it doesn't matter if I hurt people.
Yeah. And I also heard someone say, oh, I treat everybody the same. It doesn't matter to me who you are. And I'm like, you see, that's a statement that's made out of, it just tells, when you make that statement, it tells me that you haven't done a lot of introspection. Because if you make that statement, it means that, doesn't mean that you treat a child the same way you treat an adult. A child cannot reason. You definitely have to treat people differently. So that's the type of self-integration that we're talking about. You know that there's bad inside of you, but you choose to do good, So what do you think about what do you think about this concept of self-integration?
Yeah, so there's like you said, you know that there is bad, and all of us have good things and bad things about us, and also we need to make space for our emotions, good and bad. So anger is a valid emotion in some cases, and we should allow ourselves to feel it so that it can come to awareness rather than act out. So sometimes it's best to have your anger acknowledged, processed, and even shared in a respectful way than to allow it to just sit there unacknowledged, acting out, and just kind of passive aggressive behavior and all of that. So the self, as I described in my post, I was using the transactional analysis kind of framework to understand some of the behaviors that some people have, because especially in the workplace or even in relationships, sometimes you can see how some people are acting quite consciously. They have awareness, they are engaging with you as a unique person in front of them, rather than just like everybody else. I treat you like everybody else. It's just another version of I am who I am, because it means there's nothing individual about you. I don't see you. for who you are, right? So it's another version of that. So back to transactional analysis. So you've got the ego states, and some of those ego states are not necessarily bad. So for example, you can have the ego state of a parent, a nurturing parent, which is a good, but it could also be when you go into that ego state, it might not be appropriate. For example, you might be in a nurturing parent ego state with a partner, which is a romantic partner, that you should be relating as yourself rather than treating that partner as a child, for example. Or you could be in the punitive parent. So the punitive parent can show up in relationship, can show up in management, in some management styles where you just talk to everyone like you're the punitive parent, and you have authority. So it's not, again, not this an authentic relating from the self. It's this other state which is not necessarily the most conducive of good relationships and safety in the workplace, or psychological safety. You could also be in the rebel child, or it could be the natural child.
Yeah.
It could be the wounded child. So you yourself could show up as the wounded, the victim person as well, which isn't the self necessarily. Or you could show up playful, fun, which is your natural child state as well. And there's a place for that. Yeah. Can you see how there's a place for all of those things? Sometimes the punitive parent needs to come, but it's not anything that is kind of an exaggeration of that, and it's not in the context, in the right context. It can be some of those ego states. And I guess the other part of that is that we, like I said, we have parts as well. So we have wounded parts, we have protected parts, but we integrate everything. When we integrate and we understand, this aspect of me is trying to protect me, and so I acknowledge, but the right thing to do here is to behave in this way.
Yes.
You take it to kind of like a bird's eye view and a meta position, and you look at yourself as if you were looking from the outside, and then you choose a new behavior. You need to practice and practice and practice choosing this new behavior until you can show up as the best version of yourself, which comes from your executive center, from that part of not the emotional side of your brain, but the executive part of your brain, where you are able to make decisions and show up with your best behavior.
It's very difficult, this this idea of, well, it's not difficult, this idea of consciousness, because it seems to me that all you have to do is decide who you want to be in the world, right? So if you just decide that your attitude is going to come from a place of, how can I best be of service to the people that I meet, or how can I show up kind and loving to people outside of the people that I know, or everybody that I show up for, you can easily just look past, the flaws. So this idea of self-integration is very important. And I think it's something that we're going to continue to talk about, because it seems like it's challenging, but I think it's the easiest thing for you to do, because you already define who you want to be in the world, and you just show up that way.
There's one challenge about that. Sometimes when we find that we kind of reach our threshold, like our the maximum we can, through our own intention, achieve that standard that we would like to show up in this way. But sometimes we sleep and we have bad days. It's like you put your training wheels in the world, and then you go and try and be your best self. And some days you are not your best self, right? You just, some parts of you emerge, and you don't really show up in your best behavior. So there's always a chance for you to also go and offer a repair to someone when that's the case, right? And that always helps you take responsibility. But also the difficulty lies in your ability to actually be different sometimes in your nervous system. So like those things that you're not really aware that are changing how you behave, that you know, your adaptive behaviors that you learn to survive, sometimes you're able to consciously change them, sometimes you're not. So that's when you then work with a skilled coach to work through you know, those memories and find new meaning and change and provide support to the nervous system so that you can expand and feel safe to be your best self, or to take more space. Sometimes it's not just about being nicer, sometimes also about having a voice, sometimes
Yes.
it's also about having boundaries, sometimes it's about you know, showing up with a different energy, you know. So but if our nervous system is contracted and it's in assessing danger and risk and all of that, like you said, you know, when you say hi and you look at people in the eyes and you connect to your humanity, first you need to be able to support yourself, support those wounded parts of you, have them visible, and be able to support your nervous system through challenges and when you need to embrace new growth stages or a new, you know, a better version of yourself.
Yes, yes. Oh man, it's tough, Lauren. It's tough, but it can be done. There are people that have been able to integrate their personalities, you know, and they are like the Mahatma Gandhis and the Martin Luther Kings, the Mother Teresas. You know, they've been able to do it. So if they could do it, the way I see it is we could do it too. We could show up for people in society, be kind, but then also stand up for ourselves, protect ourselves at the same time. So it's that self-integration that we're referring to.
Yeah, it's not about being a doormat at all. It's not at all about that. It's actually about being able to speak up for yourself when you need to speak up in a respectful way, in a way that doesn't hurt others. So that's where authenticity really comes from, right? From you also having self-respect and empathy for yourself, and so knowing where your boundaries are and knowing where other people's boundaries are and treating everyone equally.
Yes, thank you so much, Marsha, for joining us. And your book is Road to Recovery by Marsha Tipperman. So, and it's on Amazon and everywhere, right? All the places to buy books. Thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that we stay in touch. When I read your book, you come back and we talk about it again. And say hi to all your kids. I wish you the best of luck in life. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, bye.